All right, ladies and gentlemen, what's up? This is the fantasy breakdown, and today we're going to be hitting on some injuries that are happened throughout the week last week, as well as a couple of waiver wire pickups that I think you should make, and then we're going to finish off with some quarterbacks, with the quarterbacks that you start and sit, as well as with the running backs. So first off, first notable injury, as I'm sure everybody knows, Joe Burrow. He turf toe. He's projected to be out for the rest of the season with the backup coming in, Jake Browning. Now, for that, fantasy-wise, I think it's going to let the Bengals running back, I'm blanking on his name right now, and I do apologize. I think it's going to let him get the ball a little bit more, and then I think Ja'Marr Chase, and T. Higgins both might see a dip in numbers just based off the quarterback play. Now, JJ McCarthy, he is also going to be out this week with an ankle sprain. Carson Wentz is coming in, and I think for that, we are going to see Jordan Mason get few more touches with the ball this week, and then also Jettos might take a dip in his fantasy production, but only time will tell with that. Jaden Daniels, now he does have a knee sprain. As of right now, his status is undetermined. But his backup coming in is going to be Marcus Mariota. So I would say if you do have Jaden Daniels in your lineup, you want to, just keep an eye on him and make sure that he plays or not. We don't want you to be left with Jaden Daniels in your starting lineup and he's not playing. Justin Fields, he just got confirmed as being out this week, so Tyrod Taylor is going to be the starter this week for the Jets. I think passing game might hurt, might not. I don't know. Maybe the run game might be a bit more established, and Breece Hall could be seeing those fantasy points that he really deserves to see. For another quarterback injury that's very notable, I think Brock Purdy. He also has that turf toe injury, but from what I was seeing, it's not as bad as Joe Burrow's. From what I've been seeing, he might play, he might not, but I wouldn't bank on him playing. I think Mac Jones is going to be the starter for this week and next week as well. Other injuries that we have happen around the league: Austin Ekeler, of course, Achilles, he's going to be out for the rest of the year, and I think that's going to let Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt get that fantasy production that he will definitely deserve. Jaden Reed broke his collarbone. He is going to be out for the next couple of weeks while he recovers, and I think that's going to help with Romeo Dobbs's fantasy production while Jaden Reed is out, and Matthew Golden is still trying to find his footing in the league as he is still a rookie. Josh Allen broke his nose. They are saying that they're hoping that he will play, and if he does, he might have a face mask to protect his face, and he's not on the injury report. Another injury that we have Aaron Jones. He's going to be out on IR. So thing that's going to help. Jordan Mason's going to be getting those touches that Jordan Mason's going to be getting more touches than if Jones was there. One player I think everyone should drop if they have him is Mark Andrews. He currently is averaging 1.4 fantasy points a game, and he only has 2.9 fantasy points this season, while getting 0.9 fantasy points last week. Now, with him being touchdown dependent, I don't think he is going to be a weekly roster keep or even a suitable fantasy tight end. Next, we are going to get into players that are on the waiver wire that I think you should pick up. And the first one we have is going to be Danny Dimes. He's averaging 26.2 fantasy points a game. And so far this season, he does have 52.3. And this week, he's going against the Titans defense, and he is currently only supposed to get roughly 12 fantasy points projected. However, I do think that number is going to be more, as I don't think the Titans secondary is going to be worth, or is going to be able to stop the pass as well. So Daniel Jones, definitely someone I would pick up. Next on the list, we have Wan'Dale Robinson. So far, he has a total of 39.7 fantasy points, averaging 19.9 fantasy points a game. Now, he is someone that I would pick up. He's the clear receiver 2 in that Giants offense, and I think he is definitely going to produce when Neighbors is double covered or the offense has, I don't know, like 400 plus pass yards a game. Definitely someone to look out for. Next is Alec Iomanar. I probably butchered that, and if I did, I do apologize. He is another guy that I've been eyeing on the waiver wire. So far, yes, he's averaging 9.4 fantasy points a game, and he only has 18.9 fantasy points so far this season. But that game that he had against the Rams, 4 receptions for 56 yards and a touchdown, I think definitely helped his production. And I think that might establish him as the clear number 1 receiver out there in Tennessee, if not the clear number 2. But as it stands right now, definitely someone I would pick up with that fantasy production that he's had. Now, another rookie that we have is Harold Fannin Jr. So far, he's, averaging that 11.7 points a game, and he does have 23.4 fantasy points on the season. But I think his production is going to step up, as it seems that he is the favorite tight end for Joe Flacco and the quarterbacks up there in Cleveland. Now, that does mean I think that Njoku, if you have him, I would drop him, pick up Fannin Jr., and he's definitely going to have that production that Njoku has seen the last few seasons. Next on our list, we have Romeo Doubs. And he is someone that I went over at the start here, with the injury to, I have to go back. With that injury to Jaden Reed, breaking his collarbone, and Matthew Golden still being a bit, still trying to get his footing in the league. I think Romeo Doubs' fantasy production is going to get higher than we see. I think he might even break that 180, maybe 190 fantasy points by the end of the year. As long as he keeps averaging, 10, 11 points, 10, 11 points a game, it is definitely plausible. For our next player, I want to look at is Troy Franklin. He has been established as the clear wide receiver 2 in Denver, and if he is in your league's waivers, he is someone I would pick up. Averaging 16.2 points a game, 32.4 fantasy points so far this season, almost half of what he had last year. I think Troy Franklin is going to become the favorite for Brock Purdy. Not Brock Purdy. I apologize. Bo Nix out there in Denver when he doesn't when Courtland Sutton is not able to make any of those catches. The last person on waivers that I would personally look at picking up would be Juwan Johnson, the tight end out there in New Orleans. So far, he has 31.5 fantasy points. He's averaging 15.8 points, 15.8 fantasy points a game. And he looks to be the clear favorite for Spencer Rattler in those check down throws. Currently tight end 2. We could see him stay there, but at the end, I could see him be a top 5 tight end, maybe top 3. Next here is just going to be the quarterbacks and running backs that I think he should start and sit. Starting for first off, let's go with the starting. I would start Josh Allen against the Dolphins. Projected 29.92 fantasy points. However, the Dolphins' secondary is a bit iffy when it comes to when it comes to the passing game. Daniel Jones, who I touched on earlier, only projected 17.18 fantasy points, and these projections are based off of the NFL fantasy projections. And as stated earlier, they're going up against Titans. Titans secondary, I don't think is all there defensively, and Daniel Jones does have that rushing upside, so he is definitely someone I would look at for this week in fantasy. Jaden Daniels, if healthy, I would start him. They are playing the Raiders. The Raiders secondary is a bit iffy in my opinion, and Jaden Daniels is also that dual threat. So he's also dual threat quarterback. Like your Lobos, your Kylers, your Josh Allen's, Michael Penix's. I think he's going to have a really great game for this week. The other quarterback I would start would be Jalen Hurts against the Rams. Now, the Rams, they do have a really strong defense, and I think that Jalen Hurts is going to expose them. In terms of fantasy, I think, projected 26.96 fantasy points, but I think that could definitely be a lot higher if he has a great game and he does start getting those passing yards and passing touchdowns. The next quarterback on our list to start would be Jordan Love against the Browns. Projected 24.77 fantasy points. Definitely someone to look at against the Browns secondary and his offensive weapons. He has Romeo Doubs, Tucker Kraft, Josh Jacobs, so he's definitely going to get a lot of production there. The next quarterback on the list I would recommend starting if you have him is Baker Mayfield. He is projected to get 25.74 fantasy points against the Jets. Now, the Jets, their defense, I don't think it was looking too good last week. And then this week too, I don't think it's looking too good. And Baker, he does have that. He does have the ability to run with the ball, escape the pocket, and then he has Mike Evans and Bucky Irving there as well. Next to start Bo Nix against the Chargers. Chargers secondary did look good, but Bo Nix and his 24.26 fantasy point projection, definitely someone I would look at starting. Next, someone a bit unorthodox. A lot of people have been low on him this week, but I am high on him as they are playing the 0-2 Saints, and that is Sam Darnold, and getting the projection of 23.94 fantasy points. For the Saints, their secondaries not there. I don't think their edge rushing is all that good. So Sam Darnold, definitely someone to keep an eye out on. Next, we have Dak Prescott. Not someone I would usually recommend, but after the game that he had last week, and they are playing the Bears, so, I think Bears secondary has been okay, but Dak does have Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams might tear up that front seven, as well as, CD and George Pickens on the outside. They can only double cover one person. So I would definitely look at starting Dak Prescott and his projected 25.73 points this week against the Bears. Caleb Williams, another player I would start. They are playing against the Cowboys. Caleb Williams projected 23.04 fantasy points. Definitely someone that I would look at starting this week. He had a really good week last week, and I think he could build on that with Rome Odunze. Next quarterback I would start, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray going against the 49ers. I think that's going to be a really good game to watch. Now he is projected 24.08 fantasy points, but he does have the legs. He can escape the pocket, and when good, he can make those plays. The next quarterback on the list, I have Patrick Mahomes, projected 26.66 fantasy points, playing against the Giants. Giants defense, definitely going to get exposed by Mahomes in the passing game this week. Next, Russell Wilson, and I had a bit of back and forth going through with starting him or sitting him. I would start him. Yes, he is projected 22.10 fantasy points, but he does have Wan'Dale Robinson and Malik Neighbors. I think both are going to eat this week when it comes to fantasy. The next quarterback, I would start, Jared Goff, projected 25.34 points. He has Laporta, he has Gibbs, he has Montgomery, and most importantly, he does have Amon-Ra St. Brown. Definitely someone I would look at starting this week against, and dare I say it, a very iffy Baltimore secondary. Last for the starts, I would start Lamar Jackson. He's projected to get 30.44 fantasy points this week against the Lions. Now, how well that's going to be, we don't know. It could be more, it could be a little bit less. But Lamar, in my opinion, probably the best dual threat quarterback in the league right now. He has he has great offensive weapons in Derrick Henry and Zay Flowers, as well as himself. Now, definitely someone I would look at starting. For the sits, I would sit Tua. he hasn't been looking too hot with. He has been looking too hot when it comes to fantasy so far this season, as well as the regular season. Next, Jake Browning. He is the backup for Joe Burrow. Not someone I would start. Joe Burrow being out potentially the entire season. Our line looking a little sketchy. I don't think Jake Browning is going to do too well. Carson Wentz, someone I wouldn't start in their matchup against the Bengals. Personally, I would sit him and start another quarterback on your roster if you had him. Only because I don't think Wentz is going to hit that mark that he had when he was having that MVP season back in 2017 before the injury. CJ Stroud projected 22.82 fantasy points. Not someone I would start as much as it pains me to say as a Houston fan. Offensive lines on the interiors looking bad. He's holding on to the ball too long. His production has been awful. Trevor Lawrence is another one I would not start. I would avoid him while he plays against the Houston defensive line. Houston's defensive line looking really strong this year. Cam Ward, another one on the sit list, would not start him. He has not been having that production that he gets and deserves. Next, Geno Smith. Geno Smith are playing the Commanders. The Commanders do have a really good defense, so he's someone I wouldn't start personally. Same thing with Matt Stafford against the Eagles. Wouldn't start him. Eagles probably the best secondary in the league right now. Next, we have Michael Penix against against the Panthers. I would sit Penix, but I do see the argument for him starting against the Panthers. But the Panthers do have a pretty okay secondary. Bryce Young against Falcons, I wouldn't sit him, or I wouldn't start him. I think the Bryce Young experiment in Carolina is over. It might be time for them to look for a new quarterback. Next on the list, we have Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, they are playing the Patriots. Patriots defense looking really good this year under Mike Vrabel. Aaron Rodgers, he's getting up there in age. Now, he does have that production that we did see from him back 4, 5, 6 years ago. So, if you do start him, I understand why. Drake May, similar to Rodgers. Steelers secondary is looking real good, and he does have to worry about TJ Watt coming off the edge. Next, Joe Flacco against the Packers. I would not start him, not in a million years. I did have Justin Fields on here, and that was before I found out that he was out this week, and Tyrod Taylor is getting the start. However, I am sitting both of them against the Buccaneers defense. The Buccaneers defense is looking really good this year. Spencer Rattler is next on the list. Definitely am not starting him. Don't trust him in a million years to get that production. And I do have Mac Jones on here. I personally wouldn't start him. I think this might be the end of the 49ers 2-0 run, and even when it comes to fantasy, the production isn't going to be there. Kittle's out, and George Kittle's out. I think Ayuk is still out, so his only weapons offensively are going to be Christian McCaffrey and Ricky Pearsall when it comes to the passing game. Up next, we are going to touch on the running backs. This is going to be a very long list of players to start. First off, I'm going Devon Achane, projected 22 points against the Bills. Now, Bills' run defense has been exposed by Achane before. I think it's going to be really, really solid. Really solid showing this week. James Cook projected 15.69 fantasy points. He is currently in the season, he is the running back 1 fantasy wise. So I think James Cook is going to continue that production and definitely blow the 15.69 fantasy point projection out of the window. Next on the list, we have Josh Jacobs, 18.12 fantasy points going against the Browns. Browns' run defense, outside of I think Myles Garrett, is not that good. So Josh Jacobs is definitely going to cook. Next, we do have Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor has been looking really good this year with Daniel Jones in the backfield in terms of fantasy. And I think he's just going to keep getting real good production this week against the Titans and knock out those points. Tony Pollard is someone that I am a bit iffy on starting, and I would only start him in the case of you don't have any other running backs that you trust that you would put in the starting spot. 12.18 fantasy points. Colts defense looking really good this year, and I think it's going to be hard for him to hit that production. Next, we have Chase Brown against the Vikings. And I think he is going to have a really good game fantasy-wise because of Jake Browning, and they might switch over to a more run-first offense, letting Chase Brown get that production. And I think he might go for definitely more than his projected 16.71 points. Next, Jordan Mason is going to be a similar thing with Chase Brown. Jordan Mason does have Carson Wentz coming in, and I think they might switch over to a more run-first offense as well. And definitely, he is also going to break out of his fantasy protection. The next two players, Jaylen Warren and Ramondre Stevenson, definitely somebody I would someone I would look at starting again. Same thing as Tony Pollard. Only start them if you have no other running back option to put in your lineup this week. Now, that production could be really good or really low. I would consider them boom or bust this week. Next, Kyren Williams. I personally would start him, but I would shop him around, especially since he and Blake Corum were splitting production this week or this last week, sorry. And if that happens again this week, that really could hurt his production. Next, Saquon Barkley. Definitely start him. He is, in my opinion, running back 1A in terms of fantasy this season. He is, he was great last year, great, and he's been great ever since joining the Eagles and even before then. Next, I would start Breece Hall, but I would wait before giving him that full 100% confident I'm going to start him. Production so far this season hasn't been all that good out there for the Jets. However, that could change this week with Tyrod Taylor coming in, and Breece Hall could be getting the ball a little bit more. Next, I would start Bucky Irving. Definitely someone to look at here. Projected at 19.83 fantasy points. He had a really good game last week against Houston, and I think he's definitely someone to look at for that increased production. Next, we're going with two rookies, Ashton Jeanty and Corey Krusky-Merritt. Both are projected to get, double-digit points. However, Ashton Jeanty did have, it is taking him a little bit to find that footing in the league, so his fantasy production, I don't think is going to look too good until we get closer to mid-season, maybe their bye week out there in Vegas. As for Krusky-Merritt, he came in, he is the running back one now that Austin Eckler is out, and I definitely would start him, and I think he looked really good in college last year. So he might be, if he's on waivers in your league, definitely another player I would pick up, maybe stash for a week or two till his fantasy production gets up there. Next on the list, we have Bijan Robinson, in my opinion, running back 1B in terms of fantasy. 21.21 fantasy points in this week, going against a very, very weak Falcons defense, and Bijan definitely going to get those fantasy points. Next, I would start Chuba Hubbard this week. He's so far been very solid, and he has been the number one option on the ground for this Panthers team. I think he's going to be really solid this week. Travis Etienne, I would start him against Houston, projected to get that 12.61 fantasy points. He is someone that I was a bit iffy on going into the season, but under the new coach, his fantasy value has started to skyrocket. He is someone that I picked up off of waivers myself because he was sitting there, and I definitely picked him up. Next, the next player if you're starting is Omarion Hampton. Projected 12.48 fantasy points. I don't think he has been doing that good on the ground, but he is a rookie. I'm not holding it against him. He still hasn't found his footing in the league. Next, Alvin Kamara against the Seahawks. I think he's going to have a very good game outside of Juwan Johnson and the pickup there. And then Kenneth Walker, I'm a bit iffy on starting. He's definitely injury problems, and definitely I haven't seen any good production out of him in the league outside of his first and maybe second season. Next, starting, I would start Javonte Williams. Definitely worth it. He's had a resurgence since he joined the Cowboys offense, and he is the clear number one running back on that team, and he will produce when asked. The next three, DeAndre Swift, James Conner, Trey Benson. I personally would not start them unless I absolutely had to, especially Trey Benson and James Conner. Those two, they're splitting backfield snaps. Very hard to tell who is going to get who's going to get the more points and who's going to have that high production for the week. DeAndre Swift, on the other hand, he is a bit iffy, only because I think the Bears now are in a pass-first offense with Caleb Williams and DJ Moore and Rome Odunze, and Odunze had a really good fantasy game last week. Swift, on the other hand, I'm a bit iffy on him this week. Next, Christian McCaffrey, I think definitely start him if you drafted him. I didn't, only because of the injury history and injury problems. I thought he wasn't going to do all that well, but he is somebody that I would start. Next, Isaiah Pacheco. I'm a bit iffy on starting. His fantasy production has been very low these last couple of last season and so far this season, and he is splitting snaps with Kareem Hunt. I don't know if he's splitting it with any other running back on the roster. Start him as a must start if you have no other running back. Jahmyr Gibbs, definitely someone I would start this week against the Lions. He's very good, can find the hole, can get you a lot of points. Next, we have David Montgomery. I'm a bit iffy on starting him only because he is in the backfield with Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think Jahmyr Gibbs is the workhorse back of this offense. The last player to start, Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is somebody that I am, in fact, starting this season, every league that I have him in. He's definitely someone to look at, and definitely someone that I would definitely keep an eye on. I think he's going to have a really good bounce back game this week, and he's gonna get. I'm hoping at least 20 fantasy points, blow his projection out of the water. On for our sit, I'm sitting every single running back in the Browns running back room. Definitely not something that I am too keen on this week against the Packers defense and their front seven. Next, Aaron Jones. He is out. He is on an IR with a hamstring injury. So if you do have him in your lineup, definitely take him out. Put somebody else in that's going to get you points. We want you to, around here, we definitely want you to get, the most points possible. Next, we have Rachaad White. I'm sitting him because Bucky Irving is the clear number one back and the number one workhorse in that Bucs offense. Rachaad White, if he does start, I think he only gets maybe 11 points. Or for his touchdown, I think he only gets 11 points. The next player I'm sitting is Chris Rodriguez. He has yet to play a game. He has yet to play a snap of football this season due to being a coach's decision, healthy scratches. Due to being a coach's decision, healthy scratch. Sorry. In each of the games so far, I don't expect him to get any touches or any fantasy production this week. Next, Tyler Algier. I'm sitting him because Bijan Robinson is the clear number one running back out there for the Falcons offense, and definitely someone that I wouldn't start unless Bijan goes down with an injury, and then Algier gets all of the fantasy points this week. Next, I have the Houston running backs and Nick Chubb and Woody Marks. I have been very iffy on them since the start of the season because Houston's offense has been looking very, very, very iffy. They might not even get the production this week that they are expected. Next is Bashul Tutin. I hope I said that right. Not someone I would start because just like every other running back we've gone over so far, he is the number 2 running back, and the resurgence of Travis Etienne definitely going to hurt Tutin's production this week. Next, I have the Broncos running backs, RJ Harvey, J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins, he is someone that when healthy and he is eating and he is getting the ball a lot, he does have really good games fantasy-wise, but they are going up against the Chargers defense, and I think the Chargers defense is definitely going to hinder Dobbins and Harvey's production on the ground this week. Next, I have Najee Harris out there for the Chargers. I don't expect him to get anything going or any looks on the ground this week. His fantasy production, I don't think, has been all that great. Next is DeAndre Miller. I'm not starting him one bit this week because they have Alvin Kamara out there. Alvin Kamara is the clear number one back. And I think the only way Kendrick Miller sees any production fantasy-wise or even league-wise is if Kamara does get injured. Next, we have Zach Charbonnet. I would not start him because last week he got one fantasy point, 15 attempts for 10 yards. Not someone that I would trust and starting this week. Next, Brian Robinson Jr. If he was still with the Commanders, I would start him this week, but he is not, as everyone knows. He is on the 49ers. He is the running back 2, might be running back 3 behind McCaffrey. McCaffrey's going to get all those touches. McCaffrey's the number one back. The only way I see Brian Robinson getting any sort of production this week in the league is if McCaffrey goes down. Next, the Giants running backs, I'm not starting them against Chiefs defense. Their run game has been okay this season, but I would start any of the quarterbacks that we went over in the starts this week before I started Tyrone Tracy or Cam Scatterboo against the Chiefs and their run defense. And that right there is going to be the end of it. I would have done receivers, tight ends, defenses, and kickers, but then I feel like this would have dragged on for way too long. What I am going to do, though, is down below in the description, I'm going to go ahead and put in the tables for the running backs, quarterbacks, running backs. I'll also have the receivers, tight ends, defenses, kickers, and whoever else you might be looking for. And I do appreciate you guys stopping in, checking us out, and I will catch you next time. Peace.